What do you do when there's no blueprint for what you're building and no map for where you're going? How do you know what to do? How do you know where to go? Well, the truth is, you don't. We're going to dig into this today, so stick around and let's talk about it. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. I'm glad you're here, and I am excited to share this word because this is something that has been floating around, and I know that God has been speaking to me that there is no blueprint for where you're going. This is something that I've been sensing, that He is moving us into something new, that we are upon what I have been calling an Isaiah 43 season. And I've been sensing this and referring to it in this way for about a year and a half now, that I've just felt and sensed that God is moving us into something new, and that with that I've sensed that it is a Isaiah 43 season of sorts. And with that, recently, what I've been feeling and sensing is that we are actually now taking the steps into these new things. And God has been kind of confirming this in different ways and sharing a word with me, as I just shared with you, that there is no blueprint for where you're going. And one of the verses that He has given me as kind of confirmation through various sources and other various words of confirmation with this is in Joshua 3, and it's verse 4. And the context behind this verse is that God is leading the Israelites into the promised land. Joshua gets the privilege of being the leader to carry them over and to walk them into the land of promise that God had been promising since Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Joshua gets the privilege of leading them in. And now he's addressing the people just before they cross over the Jordan River. And he's letting them know that, hey, the Ark of the Covenant, which is the symbol of God's presence, where God's presence resides, the Ark of the Covenant is going to go before you. And now you all need to keep a certain distance between you and the Ark. And at the end of verse 4, he says something very interesting. He says, "You have never been this way before." And he says that as a way to emphasize the reason and the necessity for them to keep and maintain that distance between themselves and the Ark of the Covenant. But God has been highlighting that part of this verse to me, that the way I am taking you, you have never been before. And I believe that this is something that many people are experiencing as well. That there are many, I've heard the term pioneers coming, that we are seeing a new kind of age of the church, a new rendition, a new version, a new expression of the church that God is raising up amongst His people. And with that, there comes a lot of questions. As I said in the opening, that how do we know what to do and where to go? And the answer that we don't want to hear is that we don't. Right? Truly, we don't know what to do. We don't know where to go. If no one has ever traversed this way, this path before, then we don't know. And it is always hardest to go first. But what I want to do as I continue through this is He has given me some revelation on a certain passage over probably the last 4 years. And I've been kind of sitting on this and holding it. And I know that He's been building something with it. And I feel as though He attached this revelation to this word. And that this is how He is basically giving us some courage to step forward and step forth into these new things that we may have no point of reference for, or just nothing to fall back on, nothing in the past or in history, or even in people and elders who have been in the faith longer, that they can really give us insight on, because what God wants to do is something that may be just completely new, whether it's in your family. If you may be first person, no one in your family has ever graduated college before, and you may be the first, you're doing that. Or maybe you've never known anyone, no one in your family has ever owned a business, or maybe you're stepping into something completely entirely new ministry wise. Maybe God is giving you ideas, crazy ideas, that you feel led and you just can't stop that burning in your heart to explore. but you just don't know how in the world this is going to work and what to do, and there's no frame of reference. I want to kind of jump into this a little bit more. I know that's a fairly long intro, but I believe it's necessary because I believe that it's relevant. I believe that there are a lot of us stepping into things like this. I know that I've already been walking through this type of a season, and it's where a lot of the difficulty that I've experienced over the last year has come from, is just I don't know what to do. Lord, you're calling me to something new, and I don't know what to do. But something that has helped me through all of this is this revelation that I want to share, and it's coming from Matthew 14. And this is when Jesus and Peter walk on water. It's a common passage. We may have heard about it preached a bunch of times, but I believe that I'm what I have to share with you is something that you've never heard before. I certainly have never heard it. When God spoke it to me, it absolutely blew my mind, and I want to share this because I believe this is going to give you some courage, even in the midst of any fear or whatever you may have. So I'm going to read it, Matthew 14 verses 22 to 33, and it says, "Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And after he had sent the multitudes away, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. And when it was evening, he was there alone. But the boat was already many stadia away from the land, battered by the waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were frightened, saying, 'It is a ghost.' And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, 'Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid.' And Peter answered him and said, 'Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water.' And he said, 'Come.' And Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came toward Jesus. But seeing the wind he became afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, 'Lord, save me.' And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and took hold of him and said to him, 'O you of little faith, why did you doubt?' And when they got into the boat, the wind stopped, and those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, 'You are certainly God's Son.'" So there's some things that I want to dig into with this passage. First of all, what I want to kind of just point out as a sort of foundational thought here is that when I remember the first revelation that I got on this passage, and interestingly enough, I was at the beach preparing for a Bible study. It was during the pandemic when everything was shut down, and all the Bible studies and stuff were on Zoom. So I was zooming in for my Bible study from the beach. It's a great place to have a Bible study. But we were in this chapter, and I remember reading this chapter on the beach with the water out in front of me, and kind of taking a moment to just picture. Granted, like the weather was nice, there was no storm, but just picturing, even in nice weather, what would this have looked like? A boat out on the sea, a man walking on the water, another man gets out of the boat and walks on the water, and he starts to sink, and of course Jesus pulls him up. And I got to the part where Jesus looks at Peter and he says, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And I took a problem with this. I kind of took issue with this because I thought about this and I was like, well, hold on a second. And I started praying and I said, Lord, how in the world are you going to say that Peter had little faith when there's still 11 guys sitting in the boat who didn't even try? Jesus said, "Come," and I've heard this preached before. He didn't specify Peter. He said, "Come." So with that, it's very likely that all of the disciples could have had the power to walk on water. But Peter was the only one to get out. Peter was the only one who even tried. He's the only one who even had the thought to ask Jesus to call him out onto the water. 11 other guys sitting in the boat. And Peter, the one who actually did it, he looks at him and says, "You have little faith." man, I had a problem with this. I had an issue with this. And I'm like, Lord, what is this about? And God just so kindly in that moment, he responded to me and he said, Anthony, if you understood the power that I have available to you through your faith, the amount of power, the unlimited power that I have, if you understood that power, you would understand that it only took Peter a little faith to do what he did. And let me tell you, in that moment, I was so awestruck. The only thing that I could think to do was to just pray in response and say, God, if that's what a little faith is, then I want to know what big faith can do. If that's what little faith can do, I want to know what big faith can do. I want to pray like Elisha. Give me a double portion of your spirit. I want to see what you can do through big faith. And this is kind of something that has been, I believe he's been holding me to, and has been very difficult yet super rewarding. And I think this is something that a lot of us may be experiencing, because as you walk through your faith journey, when you take difficult steps in faith, what you find is that there are many other people who will criticize or say what they want to say or look at you a certain way, and they have stayed behind. They haven't even bothered to try. It didn't even occur to them to think like, oh, well, I should try this, or I should pray and ask God for this, or whatever it is. They're just playing it safe. And when you step out, it can be easy for other people to judge your sinking, even though, or especially when they haven't ever taken the first step of faith that you took to get out of the boat. So I just want to share that with you. I want you to be, I want you to just feel released from the burden of other people's thoughts, or how other people are doing it, or just any of the outside thoughts or opinions that may come in. Because when you take a step of faith, faith steps will only look crazy. If it's God calling you to it, it's not going to look like it makes any sense. It's going to look crazy. It's going to look like plenty of things that other people can judge who have never taken it. So just don't be afraid to take that step. And there's 3 points. So I hope that encourages you, one, to take that step. And there's 3 things, 3 points that I would have that I want to point out in this as you take that faith step. As now we've kind of talked about this, and hopefully you feel encouraged to take that step. And the first thing is that it was safer for Peter to be on the water in obedience to the word of Jesus than it was for him to stay in the boat apart from Jesus. I'm going to say that again. It was safer for Peter to be on the water in obedience than it was for him to be in the boat apart from Jesus. Now look at verse 24 again. It says, but the boat was already many stadia away from the land, battered by the waves. So the waves were tearing up the boat. And now the boat really is representative of a place of comfort, right? So what is your comfort zone? What is the thing that keeps you in a place of comfort, that where you feel like there are no variables, it is low risk, you don't feel like there's much of a chance for you to fail, even if you stumble or make a mistake. It's a low cost, low risk situation, but everything is stable. Stability, comfort is always there, and there's really kind of like nothing to worry about in a sense. So that place, the boat, what they were all perceiving as the thing that was going to keep them afloat, because boats are made to stay afloat on water. But here is the very thing that represents their comfort getting beaten and battered by the thing that Peter is walking on. So Peter is walking on the very thing that is threatening their safety. And your obedience is going to carry you out into some unsafe situations, into some scary situations. Your step of faith is going to call you onto waters that seem very unsettling, very uncertain. You're not going to know what to do, how to do it. But it is, if as long as you are moving in obedience by faith to a word or a command, an instruction from God, the only thing that we find as we go is that with each individual step, we're held up. And that is the second point. I've kind of already mentioned it there. But that is that Peter was walking on the very thing that was threatening their safety. Peter is walking on the same thing that threatened the safety of the boat. So as the boat is being beaten and battered by waves, this is their comfort zone. Peter is out walking on those same waves. And I just want to encourage you. I hope that you are hearing the Holy Spirit right now on this, because I want you to feel encouraged that if you're stepping in faith, if God has called you to it and you're taking your step in obedience to what he has called you to, understand that the elements that seem threatening, the things that could threaten or destabilize your comfort or your life, you are going to have the ability to walk on top of those things. You're going to have the ability to overcome those things. You're going to have the ability to defy the odds in these things. In this season of life that I've been in, it looks absolutely impossible financially for me to still be alive. And yet God has provided. There's absolutely no way that I should be in the place that I'm at. You shouldn't even see me in a room under the roof of my house right now. I shouldn't be able to get to church in a vehicle. That none of this stuff should still be here. Every single circumstance of my situation threatens the comfort and the stability of my well-being, and yet my God has upheld me because I have walked in obedience to the call that he called me out into. And that is honestly, that is the only way that I can say that I'm still here, is because God has sustained me. And it has been scary at times. It has been crazy. It's been exciting. It has been the highest lows, the most exciting, joyful, fulfilling highs. And it has been some of the most difficult lows. It has been some of the scariest moments on the other side. But every time, before I get to the third point, every time, like Peter, when I've cried out and I have had a cry from my heart to God, I need you. I need you to show up in this. Lord, save me. God has shown up every time. And I know that he will do that for you because he is faithful. He is no respecter of persons. God shows no favoritism towards one person over another. And my third point, sorry, I kind of jumped real quick there, but God shows no favoritism. So just trust that his hand will always be there for you. So my third point is that the farther you get from the boat, the closer you get to Jesus. And this is so beautiful. And I know it almost sounds elementary. It's just so simple. But think about as Peter gets out of the boat, he starts walking on water. Obviously, there's a distance between the boat and between Jesus. And now, many of us, I want to kind of, before we kind of walk through this and the literal of the story, I want to kind of bring this into some practical terms. Many of us, when we step out and we decide to take a step of faith, let's say in giving, or I think actually let's go with giving, because I think that's a really common one that we can all relate to, is when God asks us to give. The Bible tells us that we should give generously, right? Those who sow generously will also reap generously. And so for a lot of us, and I've even heard this taught in church, that you should give, that basically believe God to that He provides enough for you, and then a little extra over to give. And that's good. I wouldn't tell you not to give. It's a good thing to give. It's a good thing to be a giver financially. However, many of us, when it comes to our giving, we may want to give a large amount, but we won't do it at the expense of taking a chance at risking our own finances or risking our own bills, risking any of our own financial well-being. We'll only take that, it will only give rather in what we can make sense of. Or maybe this is, here's a good one. Maybe you will give sacrificially. Maybe you will give an amount that's like, oh man, I don't know if we're gonna make this bill this month now. But yet, you know, in the back of your mind that you've got a credit card, and like, oh well, if nothing happens, I can just put it on the credit card for this month, and you know, we'll pay it off in another month or two, or whatever it may be. There's always, anytime we kind of take that step out into the water, proverbially, there's always kind of like, we're taking a little step, but we're still looking back and like, okay, well, if anything happens, like the boat's still right here. I'm not too far from the boat. I can save myself if anything happens. And this is just not what God calls us to. God calls us to a reckless, abandoned type of faith. And I think of it as, I always like going back to Elisha, when Elijah came and he was passing on the mantle of prophecy to Elisha. Elisha was being called as the new prophet of Israel. It says that Elijah found Elisha plowing in a field with 12 yoke of oxen, and when he placed the mantle on him and called him, immediately Elisha broke up the plow, slaughtered the oxen, and then used the plow wood to as the kindling for the fire to burn the oxen as a sacrifice. So he completely burned and ditched any backup plan that he could have had. When he got the call, he said, "All right, leaving this behind. No reason to even leave it as an option. Burn it up." He's like, "And I'm off. I'm going." When Jesus called Peter and Andrew and he said, "Follow me," it says that they left behind their boats and their fishing and all these things. And this is what he calls us to. So when he calls you out of the boat, don't be afraid to be committed and to go, because the farther you get from the boat, the farther you get from that place of comfort, the farther you get from being able to work it out and make sense of it in your own mind, and the farther you get from being able to lean on your own understanding, the closer you will get to Jesus. And that is what we see here with Peter. And the best part is because we know that we're imperfect. We know that we have all these fears, and we are prone to take a wrong step. We are prone to lose focus off of Jesus. Is I just want to remind you again that the moment you cry out, every time you cry out, God is there for you. As long as you continue to move in faith, don't turn your faith away from him. Don't turn from your faithfulness. Don't stop praying. Whatever you do, do not stop praying. Do not stop seeking. It may seem like God isn't there. It may seem like he's not answering. It may seem like he's not providing. It may seem like he's not doing any of the things that he told you that he would do. But I promise you, if you are moving in faith, he will not let you drown. He did not call you out onto this sea. Whatever your sea is, whatever the waves are that you are walking on, he did not call you out to just leave you out there and let you drown. So keep moving in faith. Keep trusting him. Keep seeking. That I cannot emphasize that enough. You cannot stop praying and seeking, no matter what. And that is how we are going to be able to step into new things. And I share all this with you also from the standpoint of there is no destination reached yet. None of us have. I think we are just starting this season this new thing that God is calling us to. And this is where we're all going to be. We're all walking through so much uncertainty, but understand too that that is exactly what faith is. If you were certain, if you had certainty about what was going to happen, you wouldn't need faith. Faith only operates in the circumstances of uncertainty. If we have certainty, then we don't have faith. We don't need faith. But this is the beautiful thing about faith, is the Bible tells us that without faith, it is impossible to please God. So you have to have faith. He actually loves your faith, even in the moments when it seems like you are drowning, even in the moments when you feel like you're faithless, or hope is lost, or it's time to give up faith. If you just keep going, he loves to see the action of faith, because we know that faith without works is dead. So he loves to see the action of continuing to move forward. Continue to do the last thing that he told you. Continue to keep seeking and praying, as I've already said, and you will see God come through. Most of the time, if not all the time, it's just that we're never gonna have that platform or that density or that solid ground come up under our feet until we actually take the step to put our foot down. I forget what movie it is, but there's an animated movie about that has a scene like this where it's like an alien guy crossing the bridge, and someone probably knows it. I haven't even seen the movie. I don't know. I've seen this clip, and it was just so profound to me. And he's kind of like learning to walk into his powers, and he's crossing this big old gap in a canyon. And part of the powers is, as he walks, if he believes it and he sees it and he doesn't look down and give in to his fear or focus on his fear, then it's like these little platforms just come up from nowhere, out up underneath his feet, and it gives him a solid ground to walk on. And that is what walking by faith is like. Is that there is no solid ground for you to step on until you go to set your foot down there. And God always provides something for you to stand on. It is always his word that will hold you up, but you have to step first. And that even kind of brings us back around to Joshua 3, that as they were crossing into the promised land, you may know this story, but as they're crossing into the promised land, God commands the priests, and he says, first, you need to place your foot in the Jordan, in the water. And this was a super scary situation, because it says that the Jordan is at flood stages all during the harvest. So the Jordan, the waters were high. They were probably rushing fast. It was a very dangerous situation. They're supposed to be crossing this river, and it would have put the whole nation of people at danger to be crossing through this river. And God doesn't split the waters first. He doesn't hold back the waters first. He says, no, first you got to step in. And it's not much. He says one step. So it's just basically putting a foot in. Just get your foot in the water. I'll hold it back. But I want to see you step into it first. And after you do that, I will do the rest. I will make the way. And so I just want to leave you with that, to close this off and to encourage you with that, is just take your step first and let God clear a way. Let him show you the next step. And if that's all you get, take one step at a time. I've shared on here before, in Proverbs 16, it says that a man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. God cannot direct steps that you're not taking. And I know that it's scary. I know that you can kind of end up in this paralysis by analysis, because we overthink things. We want confirmations. We want to hear more. We want all the things that we'll ask for God or from God. But just take your step. If you've received a word, take a step, one step in obedience to that word. And if you don't receive one, keep going. But as you go, that word is enough to uphold you. And at some point, God will speak to you a new one, but you don't get to the new one until you move on the previous one. So I hope that you guys feel encouraged. More than anything, I hope that you heard the voice of the Holy Spirit speaking to you, giving you some insight, giving you some direction, giving you some encouragement. And if you, whatever you heard, feel free to drop it in the comments. I love to hear the comments. Drop your prayer requests in the comments. I love praying for people. This is something I have been doing quite a bit lately, and it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy praying for you, and even getting to hear some of the testimonies of how God has moved and worked through that. So thank you guys for sharing your comments, your prayer requests. Thank you for watching. I love you guys. I love this community that is starting to build. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you back here.